Since there are so many amazing questions already coming in, I won't waste another second and bring our speakers to the stage. Hi, Piero. Hi, Tricia.
Hi, Evelina. And
How
hi,
are you
Tricia.
today?
Fine.
We're
So,
good.
where are you joining us from?
Tricia, you go first.
So I'm from Durban in South Africa, and it's quite
Piero.
humid.
Oh,
And it
yeah?
looks like Piero somewhere very
In the
cold.
mountains, yeah.
Yeah.
So, from the mountains?
Well, I'm based in Amsterdam and I'm Italian. But yes, I'm currently in the Italian mountains, as you can see from this hotel room curtain.
So, taking a break from skiing to answer a few questions. So as I said, there are a lot of questions coming in. So if you both are ready, I'll just jump straight in. If
Yeah,
that's
sure.
okay with you. Question number 1. I love the data graffiti campaign idea with the visuals painted on buildings and other spaces. I would love to hear more about the subject goal and goals of the campaign and how well it worked.
Okay, so the whole subject of the project was gender-based violence, teenage pregnancy. So largely it was a gender component. It had a very large gender component, okay? And the goal for it was that we had created a bot on Facebook that had was there to assist people who required information or help on gender-based violence. And that bot was now connected with a local organization that was now skilled in helping people find a shelter or get information on these topics that they were looking for. So this all tied up when someone sees these drawings or these graffitis on the wall, they are now being directed to the Facebook bot or to the helpline for them to get more information. In terms of the impact and the number of people it helped, I don't have that information on me right now. That project, I didn't specifically work on that project. It was done with the organization, and I think it was before I joined as well. But I can definitely get that information if you're interested in learning more.
Yeah, maybe you could add some notes in the talk document afterwards, because this spurred quite a discussion in the chat actually on the physical data viz murals. People seem to be very interested by them, and there's another question around them that is related a little bit. And here it is. So any idea on how to get funding for such a project? The person who's asking was recently thinking about putting some data viz on a wall as a mural, but it is quite costly.
For this particular project as well, I'm not sure who funded it. But usually how Code for Africa works is that we pitch a project to particular funders, or there's a call for a project, and we pitch and we sort of give a proposal on what we want to do. Okay. I know in Durban, where I live, there's a National Art Society, and they actually were looking at how people can use data and art together. And one of the things that they were actually doing as well is data graffiti. So I think contacting your local art society as well can really help get that out, because a lot of these graffiti campaigns are more grassroots campaigns rather than large commercial campaigns, from what I've seen in Africa at least.
All right, that makes sense. Next question. I'm moving quickly because time is going really fast and we have so many exciting questions. Did the ACVI model, and I'd love for you to remind the audience what that was. So did the inputs from this model, it's inputs from other social vulnerability index approaches. I think there's maybe a verb missing in there. Oh, ACVI. Okay, never mind. So did they model their inputs from other social vulnerability index approaches, and were they unique inputs and parameters used for considering the African context? So I'm sure you do much better explaining what that was than I did.
Yes.
Over to you.
Okay. So just to bring it back, okay. So at Code for Africa, we developed what we call the African COVID-19 Vulnerability Index, so the ACVI. And this was actually built off the United States CDC Social Vulnerability Index. Okay, so we had now added additional parameters to this. And in terms of COVID-19, we looked at the WHO, what they indicated as vulnerable. So things like if you have cardiovascular disease, if you have high blood pressure, and then we looked at healthcare systems. So if there's a lack of ventilators or a lack of hospital beds, how accessible are you to a pharmacy, etc. So in particularly what we looked at for Africa that other countries weren't looking at or other continents weren't looking at in terms of their vulnerability is we were looking at things as like access to water, access to sanitation, and access to hand washing facilities. Because even though like the US, they do have high hand washing and high access to water, here in Africa, that's something that's still quite low. And with COVID, everyone knows that, it's hand washing and access to water is very vital in combating the disease.
Okay, that makes sense. Could you share a bit more about the challenges, and this is probably a question for both of you, with integrating with government and Ministry of Health efforts in your projects?
Okay, so it's so difficult to get a meeting with anyone. We make phone calls, we send letters, we email, we even go to offices and wait and speak to secretaries, and then you send from one person to another person, and then someone goes on leave, and then someone says they're not authorized to do it. It's just a lot of red tape. Eventually, when we do get a meeting, there's a lot of back and forth with an MOU. They want to get a document in place before they can even talk to you further. And these government departments are always like, okay, what do we now what can we get out of it? So it's quite a long term how can I say, a long term solution that we need to develop. So we need to start getting these partnerships in place long before we start any project. So once we have projects and we have a limited time frame to implement these projects, we know that we already have these partnerships in place.
Yeah.
Anything to add on the design side, Piero?
Yes, actually, I wanted to add just a small thing. One of the early slides of my introduction was referred to a project called MBS, for example, or Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. That was, if anything, a positive example of something that went, I don't want to say smoothly, but it was definitely fruitful to take the administrative board early on board with our thinking process, showing them our kind of discovery phase, and getting them really excited from the start, so that we took them on a journey, not just from kind of the red tape and paperwork, but also on the design process. And it really helped getting things approved quickly and with excitement, so that they really wanted to see this finished as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Since your project caters so many different groups of people and audiences, what metrics do you use to track the impact of the visual approach you choose to share the information?
So
maybe I can. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you go.
Okay, I'll start with one of it. Okay. So as Piero mentioned, and I touched on it a bit, is that we do a lot of trainings at Code for Africa. And in Pesayetu, in particularly, we had built this tool for a specific project, and we are training these group of journalists to now report on development indicators. And so these journalists will now be trained on using these tools, but of course, it's not limited to these journalists alone. So whenever we have a tool that we build, we then train on it, we share it across all our different webinars, etc.
Piero, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, there's both a impact analysis that we do when the project is launched, but there's also a lot of work that we do beforehand. As you can probably imagine, there is a lot of user persona definition that we do beforehand, and that's always difficult to just do out of the blue. So the best thing is really to start the process with interviews. So with reference to Pesayetu, for example, a strong element of our partnership was with a lot of radio stations that were local. And those radio stations were a key player in this process because they are the ones that connect with journalists, that they might read out statistics and share them with the broader public. And a lot of these stats or even data visualization that we might show in the Pesayetu platform might be the very core substance of the message. So we wanted to check very early on with them if the content, but also the form, the tone of voice that we will use would be meaningful, would make sense for their own audience. So that these conversations really would inform our very early design thinking processes, but also on the data side, probably the way we wanted to cluster, filter, and label things, right, Tricia?
Yeah, and another thing as well, our visualizations can be embedded into stories, or and it can be shared on Twitter and all of that. And I'm sure we can actually track that to measure the impact or the reach of our visuals.
The impact question seems to be very interesting for a lot of members of the audience. So even after the talk, if you have any links or other ideas that you think of, feel free to add them to the talk notes. So since Piero, you got a little bit into the Pesayetu project, let's just come back to it for a second, because there's a question around it. You already touched upon it a little bit, but let's just wrap it up. And so the question is, who are the core users of the Pesayetu project, and were those primarily local journalists or other advocates? You already mentioned the journalists, but maybe there are any other groups you would like to mention.
Yes, in fact, there is actually maybe another disclaimer that's worth doing, that Code for Africa has almost like a key set of personas and users that are often not just journalists or researchers, but there's also a lot of activists and organizations. And what's really what they always are after are things, data sets or data visualizations that can be embeddable, that can be usable, but essentially that can really strengthen the message of their campaigns or the project they're working on. So for example, one thing that we wanted to ensure, Tricia was hinting at that, was not just the shareability of every chart, but on the technical side, we didn't show it in the presentation, but there is a pop-up button that allows you not just to download an image like a JPEG, but also a embeddable chart that can go straight into your PowerPoint presentation, for example, with editable features within the actual chart, because these have been proven to be some of the most requested features from some of the users of this kind of charts and this kind of projects.
Yeah, they do sound super useful, and I hope that will inspire other creators who are here today as well. We have 2 minutes left, so let's take one last question. I was wondering about the interdisciplinarity of your team. Did you collaborate with epidemiologists and experts from fields outside of data analysis and data visualization in the COVID-19 project, and how did that work?
Yes, we did. We actually had a Wana Data Fellow. So Wana Data is one of CFA's initiative of female-only technologists, designers, scientists from all fields. Okay, so she's actually an epidemiologist, and she helped us. So we'd get on a call with her. She'd review. She'd look at our ideas, and then she'd brainstorm. And from her knowledge, working on the vaccine and being in meetings and doing research in the field, she was able to help us identify what the public should know. She was able to help us understand, or helped us to identify what should be the best way to visualize COVID cases, because one person can get the virus multiple times. So it's very difficult to measure what % of the population actually got the virus.
Okay, any final notes or?
Maybe it's worth adding one more note, especially about the two projects, Pesa-Yetu and COVID Africa, that we've shared today. Maybe some of you in the audience are already looking online or wondering why we didn't share a URL. Both of these projects are currently in the semi-final stages of development. This is why we're really pushing through to make sure they're up soon. They're not yet, but we will share links as soon as possible, possibly even with the Outlier audience as soon as those are ready.
Amazing. So everyone do follow Tricia and Piero on Twitter to get the latest links and the latest projects. We do now have to move to the next talk, but I want to thank you so much for joining us on the stage, and I hope you'll stay around for the remainder of the conference. It was great having you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.